Welcome to Business Talk, presented in collaboration with the University of Rio Grande and the Ohio State University South Centers, from the heart of southeastern Ohio at the University of Rio Grande TV studio. Our goals are simple: promote the University of Rio Grande and the Ohio State University South Centers, as well as advocate local small business and their support organizations. More importantly, promote southeastern Ohio as a wonderful place to live, explore, and learn. There are many different ways you can find us. The University of Rio Grande Cable Access Channel 17, live online at blogtalkradio.com, and on YouTube if you are unable to catch our show live. Introducing our co-hosts, Jason Winters, Mike Thompson, Patrick Dengel. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hey, welcome back to our show. Ryan and Mike, we have a special guest today. First of all, she comes from an area that is dear to my heart. She works in Portsmouth, Ohio, or Portsmouth, Ohio.
Who's Ryan?
Did I call someone? Well, one of you look like Ryan to me. My annual review is coming up, and it's with Ryan. So. Oh,
okay.
So, what can I say on that?
So,
Mike
isn't that where you
Jason,
have a river house?
Yes.
Portsmouth.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So it's the onslaught of our special guest today, who's going to be talking about hospice care. She has worked with 10 years. She's been involved with hospice care. She's a nurse, a registered nurse that's been working with all different kinds of individuals. Started out in a pediatric care, and then for the last 10 years been involved with hospice care. And I really did not know about hospice care until it started to affect one of our friends. So I'd like to welcome Brenda Evans, registered nurse with the Southern Ohio Medical Center, the SOMC Hospice program. Welcome.
Thank you.
Before we begin talking about hospice, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm originally from Oak Hill, born and raised. Married my high school sweetheart, Stan Evans.
How long ago was that?
About 35 years ago, in 1979.
Now, wait,
31.
You're only about 25.
35 years. Oh, 25, no.
Yeah.
No, a little
So,
older than
okay.
that. We raised 3 great kids. They're young adults now. We have an older son who's married in Columbus. He and his wife are teachers up there. And
very good.
they have our first grandbaby. And their son is 9 months old, and his name's Joseph, and he's dear to our heart.
Very good.
Our second child was our daughter, Jonna, and she is starting her 3rd year at Capital Law School, so she's up in Columbus also. And then our third son is back here in the Oak Hill area studying mortuary science. And
very
so,
good. So that's real close to one of Jason's past lives.
It is.
Yeah.
Which
have a little bit in common there, don't we?
So, and is he planning on setting up shop?
Yes, he actually works under my brother, who owns a funeral home in Jackson and Oak Hill. So he'll stay working with him. Yeah.
Working in a hospice is a little bit different than pediatrics.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
How did you eventually get involved in?
Actually, it was at the end of 2004, when my mother needed hospice services. And we went through her journey with the help of a hospice nurse. And unfortunately, it was only about a 2.5-week admission for her. And then she passed, and I knew immediately I had a calling to go into that profession. So I've never looked back and regretted a minute of it.
And so, what is hospice? Tell us what.
Well, hospice in general, without getting too boring, it's actually been traced back to the medieval times, taking care of those with terminally illnesses, terminal illnesses. But it wasn't until, I'm thinking it was like the end of the 1940s when hospice became more of a specialized care and more organized over in Europe. And it was probably in the mid-70s it came to the United States. And from there on, finally Medicare recognized it as a benefit that they should offer. And then JACO, which is the Joint Commission Accreditation for Hospitals, set up their special requirements for hospice organizations. And so it's been around for a long time. I know a lot of people still to this day have a hard time accepting hospice just because of the word is kind of scary. They think it's end of life, the last few days or last hours of life, and it's totally a lot longer than that, a lot more involved than that.
So give us an example.
Of who is eligible?
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
question. A person with a terminal disease that cure is no longer realistic. The doctor has finally said there's nothing more I can do for you. I like to use the word comfort care. A lot of times doctors will say we can refer you to hospice organization who can provide comfort care. That maybe is a little bit easier for them to accept. So if a doctor feels a patient has a life expectancy of 6 months or less, now that's just a guess. It's an educated guess, but it's a guess. I think also a misconception of hospice is that it's all cancer patients, but it's not. It's heart disease, lung disease, renal disease, which is kidney disease, even end-stage Alzheimer's. People are eligible for
So that's
hospice.
why Mike and Jason have always hinted around about my being in hospice.
Eligible.
Yeah, eligible.
Yeah.
So everybody that's in or eligible for hospice or probably you see are 60 and older? Or-
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah. Hospice, actually some of the children's hospitals have their own specialized hospice for children when they have disease processes that there's no cure for. If those children want to come home, if the families want to bring those children home, no matter if they're in our area or wherever they live, the local hospices usually will pick them up. But obviously that's not the majority of our patients. Yes, 70 and 80-year-olds, we have more of, but 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, anything that, anyone that has a disease that there's no cure for.
Do you give most care at home or the hospital, or do they have to be out of the hospital to see you
Good
guys? or-
question. We do both. We do outpatient and inpatient. The nurses will go to the hospital if a patient is in the hospital and the physician has said that there's nothing more we can do for you. They'll come and actually admit the patient in the hospital to help them to be able to come home. So we'll make sure that the equipment is at the home waiting for them, whether it's a hospital bed, oxygen, etc. So most people their wishes are to pass at home. So that's what the majority of what we do is go into people's homes. We do have some patients that are in nursing homes, so we work side by side with the nursing homes and give them just some additional services. And we also, hospice provides bereavement counseling too. So after the person has passed, we don't just go away. We have services for the families if they
I would imagine it would be more difficult on many family members. Sometimes if you know that you only have a few months to go, obviously you go through various different stages
Right.
of concern and stress, but eventually
Absolutely.
you do accept it and
Hopefully we get everyone to that point. But everybody has their own challenges
Right.
and their own relationship with that patient. So
Right.
not only do we come in and spend a lot of time with the patient trying to go through this journey, we're with the family too.
Yeah.
And we have a team of specialists. We have social workers. Obviously, the nurse will take care of the medical part of it. The social worker takes care of the kind of guiding family and patients on whatever concerns they might have on their resources that they have available. Say for instance, a patient is concerned about their finances or legal issues. Well, the social worker can kind of guide them on who they can talk to and get their questions answered. And that's the whole idea, is trying to make this journey as peaceful as possible. But the first thing we do is make sure that they're comfortable.
Sure.
And we have a medical director who helps us, who actually guides us through this whole thing. But we also let the patient keep their attending physician, their primary
Good.
physician, and
Good.
we try to work with that physician. And that's where we get our orders basically from, is from the attending. And so it's mostly, we try to do the medical part, try to get them comfortable physically, so that then they can take care of their emotional, spiritual, what other concerns they might have. And we also work with the family to try to meet those concerns.
Let's talk about the emotional and spiritual, because I would think that every individual that comes in there that knows they're going to die has to make peace with their own specific God.
Absolutely, and a lot of times it's peace with other people
Yes.
and relationships.
Oh, that's a good
And
point.
that's what's really, we work really hard on, is if there's somebody, maybe their relationship is kind of separated, then we try to work with them and try to, because everybody's involved in this. Even though this is the patient's journey to end of life, there's a lot of people involved in it, and the dynamics can get really complicated sometimes. And but we're there to support them and to meet all their needs. Spiritually, we have chaplains that are available for the patient or family. Whatever religion they might have or belief that they might have, we don't try to come in and change their beliefs. Everyone has a spirit, so
Yes.
everyone has some belief of what's going to happen after this life that we know of. So we just kind of just follow their lead and help them find peace with that.
Brenda, for years I spent in the funeral industry, and I would sit across the table making arrangements for someone who just passed away. And on multiple occasions, I've heard the term angel. Those people were just angels. They came into our life, they came into our home, they took care of our loved one. And I heard so many hospice workers just referred to as angels. And it talks about that comfort care. For those people who out here who are not familiar with it, and in today's society, we don't get familiar usually until that situation arises in our life. Tell us a little bit about the comfort care. What kind of services do you actually do with the individual? I know you help take care of their physical needs, and
Well,
talk a little bit
we're
about that.
there for comfort so that they can stay home. Because back in the day, 50 years ago, if a person was diagnosed with a terminal disease, they were usually institutionalized.
Right.
And it was usually pretty cold, and a lot of medications used to maybe sedate them to provide comfort. We obviously use medications, but that's not our goal, obviously, is to, we try to give them quality of life and dignity and respect. And comfort care is different than the medical field of the curative care. They use things, we use things a little, medications and processes a little differently. That's why it's considered a specialty, That's why we can get them and try to address them as a whole. Again, pain management is usually usually part of it. Not everyone has pain towards end of life, but whatever their symptoms are, we try to get under control. Our inpatient unit, besides outpatient care, we also have inpatient care. And we'll bring a patient in if there's a symptom that we can't get managed in the home, and we'll have them come in and let our nurses take care of them and the doctors 24 hours a day until they resolve whatever issue they had and then come home. The inpatient unit is also wonderful for respite care. Medicare allows us to take care of the patient 5 days a month. It gives the family, for lack of a better word, a break. Not necessarily that the family can't come in and spend those 5 days with the patient, but they're not responsible for their care and giving them medications and providing for their physical needs. Or if the family member has to go away to a wedding or wherever, we can take care of their loved one, and they know that they can trust us.
We kind of switched gears on our listeners there. We went from talking about home care for hospice, and then we talked about in care.
Inpatient.
And that's something new to our area, isn't it? I mean, that is SOMC the only one around that has
Well,
an inpatient
you know,
care?
unfortunately, not every small community has an inpatient unit. They do have access to a lot of hospices will have a special room set up in the local hospital, and that they can bring their patients in and provide care for them. So they will always have access to care, 24-hour care for those 5 days, but they don't always have a freestanding inpatient unit. And SOMC was very blessed to have the community support that. It's not
Well, you have 12 units, 12 suites.
12 suites, yes, and they it's where the bed is, in a separate room of for the family to spend. Also within the building is a larger family room, a pool table room, a patio outside, a little dining area.
Now,
So-
is this similar to like McDonald's house?
Oh, the Ronald McDonald
Yeah.
House?
Yeah.
I think the difference there is that the patient isn't there. That's for the family
I
of
see.
patients
Oh, okay.
that are being seen.
I see. The patients in the hospital.
Usually,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, and that
Okay.
gives the family a place to stay. This is, basically, obviously for the patient, but the family can stay 24/7. But the other time we use the inpatient unit is if the patient's wishes are not to pass at home. We try to bring them in for end of life, and sometimes we're successful with that, and sometimes we're not, just because, the timing, maybe we didn't time it just exactly right. Their decline went a little faster than we thought. We try to bring them in the last 3 days of life, and sometimes they're just too unstable to transfer.
Sure,
So,
sure.
Is there any advice you can give someone who might have, someone approaching that time?
advice as far as,
How to deal with it, when to call, or...
oh, you mean family members on
Yes.
when to
Right.
call?
Yes.
Okay, absolutely. Every time we go out and visit, we're giving some education. And the good thing is that we sometimes will see change where the family hasn't seen a change, because they're there every day and we're not. Vice versa, sometimes we get a phone call from a family member and all they have to say is, there's something different. They don't have to be specific at all, and we get in the car and rush out there because they know the patient so well that if
Sure.
one day they walk in and they think
Yeah.
there's something different, then we know that the patient's probably declining. But, as far as advice, education is given every time we visit them. The thing is, there's so much that goes on being a caregiver, emotionally and physically, because you're physically taking care of the patient and you're emotionally attached to that patient. So say you're taking care of your mom and you're focused on when do I give the medicine? Did I give too much? Should I not give this? Should I do this? Oh no, she needs to be rolled in bed. We need to change her. We need to, that sometimes, just sitting there and being a daughter, you forget.
Sure.
Or a son.
Right.
So
Sure.
sometimes we can say, you know what? Everything's taken care of right now. Why don't you sit down and just hold your mom's hand?
And some
Yes.
of that personal care is very difficult for a family member to actually give to their mother or their
Right,
father.
right. And some of the care, we also have hospice aides that can come in and help, and that they can help actually just bathe the patient. And even though the caregiver is capable of doing that, it's nice to allow someone else to come in and actually do it. It shows, the hospice aide can sometimes show different techniques on how to care for their loved one who may be bedbound, and how to even change the sheets while there's a person still in the bed. And so, we try to get the hospice aides in there, although they're not, they don't have, patients and families don't have to accept the aides. Again, the social workers come in. We have chaplains that can come in.
And this is mostly all by volunteer basis? You don't get anything you don't want, or you just, this is what we do?
The nurse has to come. The nurse has to come every week because we're the eyes and ears for the doctor. We can't do anything without an order from a doctor. So short of the doctor coming in and seeing the patient, the nurse has to come. The other services they do not have to accept. Most of them do accept that extra help, whether it's a hospice aide or the social worker.
So it's
or chaplain.
offered. And
It's optional, but not the nurse. The nurse needs to be there. We can skip a week once in a while if there's really a reason, that they can't have us come in. But you have to remember, especially right at first, we're strangers. We're strangers coming in at a very personal time in a family's life, and allowing us to come in and suggest things and bring, pieces of equipment and medications. I mean, it's scary, and we all know that. You can't really stay doing this profession without understanding a little bit about where the family and the patient's coming from. Because they're dealing with so much stuff right now too. Their loved one has been told they're going to die. And even though we all know we're going to die someday, they've been given a time, even though it's a guess of time. But
but
it's scary. It's very scary.
within 6 months that you're going to be passing on is a lot different than, well, I hope to live to 90.
Right.
years
And
old.
I always say, I'm going to get out in a car this afternoon, and my life here on Earth might
That's
be
right.
over.
That's right.
But I don't dwell on that. And these people are dwelling on it, and
Sure.
they're laying awake thinking about it, and they're trying to figure out all these spiritual questions they might have. And like I said, financial questions they might have, or legal questions they might have, or relationships they might need to resolve. And there's just so much that hits the family.
Let's talk a little bit about that financial question, because, you would think that angel care would be very expensive. And that's what you guys are at
Yeah.
that time. You're angels. You're coming in, you're
Well.
taking care of everybody.
Right.
What does that cost a family?
Well, it actually costs the family nothing. And we're very blessed in this country that we have benefits that Medicare has recognized. So whether a patient has Medicaid, if they're eligible for Medicaid, that they'll pay for it. Some of them have Medicaid and Medicare, or a lot of third-party insurances will have hospice benefits. If we find a patient that is indigent and has no resources at all, we still take them. No one is ever turned away from hospice. And we are fortunate to do that because we have donations and fundraisers.
Yeah, you have you can purchase a memorial brick. You have Hospice Caritas Fund donations. You also have quilts.
Yes. The biggest fundraiser we have is once a year. It's a hospice hike. A lot of hospices in the nation do this. And we were very blessed to have a great turnout. They're usually families come as teams, either while their loved one is actually on hospice services or had been on our services in the past. So they have they're really passionate about donations. Also, a lot of times when a patient does pass, the family will ask for in lieu of flowers to give to their local hospice.
Oh, that's a good
And
idea.
so
That's a good idea.
I really highly recommend that because the families wouldn't say that if they didn't mean it.
Right.
It's hard not to send flowers though, but
Yeah,
sometimes
I
you can
know.
do a little bit of both.
Yeah. Sometimes people want to recognize that their heart goes with the family, and flowers is one of those
Traditional ways,
traditional
yeah.
memories. Yes. Let's talk a little bit about the spiritual end. Spiritual end is one word that sort of talks about the emotion impact, the fact that we are leaving this world, the fact that we have been taught all of our lives this is going to happen and that's going to happen. How do you nurses, or how did the caregivers not get stressed out with being pulled and tugged with all the different emotional kinds of things?
As far as the staff and the nurses and the aides and social workers or whoever works for hospice, we do have a support system among ourselves. You know, we all get emotional. We cry. I tell sometimes when I cry, like hospice nurses do cry, you know, because we get attached to these
Sure.
people. And we come in as strangers, but, you know, sometimes, you know, unfortunately, we're only with them for a day or two, but sometimes we're with them for a year, sometimes 2 years, if their decline is really slow.
Sure.
We get to know their extended family. You know, we get pretty close. So sometimes we have to, we have little lunches or we get together and just try to support each other because it's, you find yourself, you can take it home, and it's
Yes.
okay to take it home a little bit,
Yes.
but, you know, you're mostly there for the family.
I understand, and I would think that when the end is coming very, very close, I have heard of interesting things that patients have shared. Care to-
Absolutely, absolutely. And I will tell you, the medical world will want to play that off as, and we're talking about seeing visions
Yeah.
or seeing loved ones who have already passed or
Yes.
having communication with loved
Yes.
ones who have already passed. And some will want to write that off as lack of oxygen to the brain, too much medication, maybe side effects of the medication, maybe electrolyte imbalances due to
until
dehydration.
they're there. I
But well,
understand.
what you will find from anyone who works with hospice is that I'm going to say 90% of our patients have a vision of some sort. Whether it's
A
in their
calming
sleep,
vision.
a calming vision, and I believe it's messengers that are coming to say that it's okay to come because no one wants to leave
Understand.
this world as we
Right.
know it.
Yeah.
And
Especially the family members don't want them to leave.
and they
yeah.
don't want them to leave.
Yeah.
And you know, you can read, there are books out written by hospice nurses. One is Final Gifts, that's really, really touching, that patients of all ages, you know, you can find children who see family members that they've never met before, maybe even.
Sure.
All the way to, you know, they're 90 and
Yeah.
90-year-olds who
Well,
are
you're
getting
dealing
this.
with not an everyday occurrence, and when someone is ready to leave, I think most of us have to be open to, you know, not write it off as this or that.
Right,
And-
right.
and I
Because
would
it's
imagine-
so real. And
Right.
that's another thing we always want to make sure that the family, if the patient actually says, you know, I saw Mom this morning, or I saw Dad this morning, and or, you know, it's real important that the family doesn't say, "Oh, that wasn't real."
Yeah,
that
I
was,
know.
you
I
know,
know.
because then that'll just shut down
Yeah.
the patient, and
Yeah.
they won't want to share anymore.
Right.
And it's really exciting to hear
Yeah.
who they saw,
Yeah.
and sometimes they'll have just a look in their face, maybe be staring off to the ceiling or past you, like might be looking at you, but really past you, and it's good to say, you know, what are you seeing? Who is that you're looking at? And then they're open enough and feel safe enough to say, well, I just saw so-and-so.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And
I think
it's
that,
That has
emotional.
to like strengthen your belief in the afterlife and
Absolutely.
and help people, you know, and maybe not look at it, the death process as being such a bad thing.
Right, right. Well, I always I don't even like to use the word dying. I like to use end of life as we know it, because I personally don't feel it is the end of our life.
Right.
It's the only end of our life here as we know it.
yes.
But yeah, it can be,
I think the movie Ghost really gave a very good visualization that something happened that was, well, at least good for Patrick Swayze. That was a positive experience.
right, right. And it always gives me goosebumps when the family says, you know what, Dad last night said that he was talking to his mom. I mean, and then I say, I believe it. I mean, you know, it
Well,
throws
sure.
the family off sometimes.
Sure.
But that can happen
Sure.
a month, 6
Yeah.
weeks before a patient actually passes.
Yeah.
They can start having
Right.
this communication. Yeah, it's real.
Well,
There's
Brenda, we have come to the end of our show.
Okay.
Why don't you share with our audience, if there's someone out there that wants to volunteer with hospice, or there's someone out there that needs more information, maybe they have a loved one that is
Mm-hmm.
entering that time of their life, how do they get a hold of you, and how do they get a hold of hospice?
Well, good question, and I did want to point on that, make a point that anyone can make a referral to hospice.
Good.
So if you have a loved one and you think, gosh, something's not right, I think you can call any local hospice. They will talk to the physician, find out if the patient does have a terminal disease, because sometimes you don't get the referral from the doctor. You get it from a family member. So then a hospice nurse can come out and assess the patient, and then if they're appropriate, they can admit them. So that's one thing I always want to get out there, is that if you think that your loved one isn't getting any better, mention it to your doctor or make that phone call yourself. And don't be afraid of the word hospice, and we'll try not to use the word hospice if it's, you know, we can't deny that where we're from, but we can, you know, use other terminology and comfort care nurse, you know. So, and in the community, if you want to get involved and you don't have, you know, if you're not a social worker or a chaplain or a nurse, you can volunteer, and we use volunteers, and I didn't touch on that, but we have a volunteer coordinator who arranges education for the volunteers, and they can run errands for patients and families, or they can come and sit with the patient while the family member needs to go to a doctor's appointment or whatever. And so there is a way to get involved. And then, of course, donations doesn't go to our pay. You know, it goes right back to the patients.
To the
So,
patient, yeah.
yeah.
Well, I've learned a great deal, and I
good.
want to thank you, Brenda, for coming on the show and sharing. Perhaps sometime soon we can have you back, and maybe our filming crew, Jason, Mike, Ryan, or Patrick.
We don't know who Ryan is, but
I'm sure who Ryan is.
Pat's already seeing other
he's
spirits in the
seen
room.
people who have passed before him.
Oh, it's over there. You know, maybe we can take our filming crew down and just see how comfortable it really that you try to make.
Absolutely.
So, but I'm very pleased that you were involved. Your website is www.somc.org/hospice. I want to thank you very much, Brenda, for being on our show. I'm Patrick.
I'm Jason.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Brenda.
Thanks for watching.